Guided by the advice of our health experts, the Medical Advisory Committee, and after consultation with provincial and local government, Cabinet has decided to place the entire country on alert level 2, with effect from midnight on Monday, the 17th of August 2020. Alert level 2 in terms of our risk-adjusted strategy in dealing with the pandemic means that there is moderate COVID-19 spread of the virus with a relatively high health system readiness. The move to level 2 means that we can remove nearly all of the restrictions on the resumption of economic activity across most industries.
Well, we are less than 4 hours away from the new year, as some people have dubbed level 2. But have you thought about where do you want to travel to as the tourism sector opens up? Please share with us what the new year means to you using the hashtag SABC Unfiltered. Good evening, I'm Aldrin Simpier and this is Unfiltered. So according to Stats SA, the tourism industry is estimated to have lost about 22.7 billion rand a month, or about 748 million rand a day, as a direct result of the lockdown. Since the implementation of the national lockdown towards the end of March, prospects of a getaway vanished. Today, we are in conversation with the tourism expert Leanne Back. We also have a founder of Sakumzi restaurant in Soweto, Sakumzi Makubela, as well as Lumkile Mondi, who is a senior lecturer at the School of Economics and Business Science at the Wits University. So they're joining us for this conversation. Remember that you can be part of the conversation using the hashtag SABC Unfiltered. At the end, let me start off with you. Have you thought about where you want to travel to?
Oh, there's so many places. I actually can't wait. I'm based in Gauteng, so you can imagine I've been looking longingly at all sorts of opportunities in Limpopo and in Mpumalanga, Northwest, the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, all over. I actually can't choose.
Did you miss traveling though?
Absolutely.
Yeah? But Sakumzi, for you?
Yes, I would love to do Limpopo, maybe Limpopo. I just want to drive or go to Nelspruit. It must be, I must be driving. I don't even want to fly.
Yeah. What, are you missing the animals though?
I just need to get away just to gain energy before I start to work.
Yeah. And Bob Mondi, for you?
My wife is a student at the University of Georgia, Athens. So even though I would love to travel, I can't. So I'm stuck here in Johannesburg and enjoying the winter here.
Isn't there a place that resembles the area that she's in, somewhere here in SA? I'm sure we can find somewhere and you guys can FaceTime.
There's lots in South Africa, as you know, even here in Gauteng. Mahali is not far away. Of course, I would love to go hiking in Mahalis and other places around Gauteng. So I'm spoiled for choice. But I just thought to your question, my bag, because of my wife, is a distance away than the others around South Africa.
And she might be watching this and be asking you, why didn't you miss me at all? And let's start this conversation off with them speaking about what level 2 means for the tourism industry.
It's actually quite significant.
Yeah.
Basically, what it means is that all South Africans can now travel freely around the country. That means we can take a holiday, we can basically, I mean, we have been allowed business trips up till now, but the access is going to be more free. We don't have to travel with permits.
Yeah.
And in reality, I think a lot of South Africans there's such a pent-up demand to go on holiday that we're going to see a massive spike. In fact, I don't know if you saw that the Sandparks website collapsed on Friday night.
Yeah.
Straight after the president's announcement. So you can see, I mean, just that is an indication that people are really desperate to get away. And as Sakumzi was saying, actually the desire to self-drive is huge because obviously the risk is much lower. You're in your own vehicle. So people are really going to want to get out and make that opportunities. Obviously, there are going to be constraints around school holidays now, which is probably very limited school holidays. because of the children have missed so much school, so which is a negative. But we're going to see weekend getaways. We're going to see lots of creativity of people just making a dash to get to the beach, to get to the bush, which is exciting. So it is definitely a relief for many players in the tourism industry. Not all players. You have to be realistic. It's not.
What do you
not
mean by
everybody's
not
going to benefit.
all players?
Well, some of our product is just not geared to the South African market, and no matter how much they discount, for a South African to pay 6,000 rand a night, there's not many South Africans that are prepared to or can afford to pay something like that, even at a highly discounted rate. And then also within the value chain, we've got a lot of tour operators, destination management companies that deal with the foreign market. And obviously with our borders closed, we've got no foreign tourists coming. So, and their types of services are not easily adaptable to the domestic market. So they're going to be lacking. And they're obviously still hankering, and they're going to need our borders to be open for them to actually start operating again. So those businesses are really going to battle. So, in reality, only just under half of our tourism industry is stimulated or generated by the domestic market. So, so there's a big chunk that is actually not going to benefit. And whether it's enough, it will be enough for some businesses. Whether it's enough for all businesses, it's unlikely. And a big concern, of course, is that, and I talk about the tentacles of our tourism industry, is that they're far-reaching. They go very far into other sectors. And whether these businesses, with the bits of income that they will be getting now, is it sufficient for them to start stimulating to buy, for example, new linen, which supports so many other sectors of our industry, and in terms of the produce that they buy, etc. So the benefits are going to be there. Obviously, obviously for the real benefits to happen, we need to have our borders open. Okay,
and so Kumzi, for you?
Yes, it's been pretty tough, as she has said. It's not only affecting us at Kumzi Restaurant. We look at the tour operators, as we were calling them after this COVID-19. There was no one in their offices. We had 110 people working. Yes, we are open for business, but can we really call everyone we were working with now? We just cannot, because it's like we're starting a new business. We had 110 before we shut down the business. Now it's like we're starting a new business. We need to start with only 25 people.
Wow. Does that mean that you had to let go of some of the people, or is it just that you had to scale down?
We had to scale down, and as soon as the business picks up, then we can call them. On a quiet day, we used to see 200 people, and it was more tourists that were coming around lunchtime every day. So as the airlines are still closed, there's no one coming in the country. As for us, we are open for domestic tourism, not international tourism. So it's still pretty tough, though we welcome what the president is offering.
We'll have a conversation about the impact of not having international travel resuming during lockdown level 2. But Bob Mondi, just quickly on the impact of the tourism sector reopening and the domestic tourism at least benefiting from this.
And so my biggest concern relates to the impact of the lockdown, particularly on employment. We've seen in the surveys that have been conducted so far around a very bleak picture around employment, meaning that there's been a huge hemorrhage of incomes across the board. We've seen even at formal employment levels where executives have had to take a cut of between 20 and 30%. And even at lower level where people were earning about 50% of their salary. So I think that even though the picture that's been painted by my colleagues is promising, I think the impact on the incomes and therefore the outlook going forward for many South African households, given the impact that I've highlighted, is going to be a very risky phenomenon for people to be spending on luxuries such as tourism, given the uncertainty of the outlook going forward. And I'll caution that I think until people understand the security of their employment and of their incomes, I think it should be premature for them to exploit the opening, given that we see dark clouds going forward.
Okay, and when we come back, I also want to have a conversation about the other external factors that could have an impact on the number of people who would be traveling domestically, and that is around the anxiety levels that some people have and still the fear around COVID-19. And what do we do about how we report on COVID-19, and does that at all have an impact on those anxieties? That conversation just after this.
All restrictions on interprovincial travel will be lifted. Accommodation, hospitality venues, and tours will be permitted according to approved protocols to ensure social distancing. Restaurants, bars, and taverns will be permitted to operate according to approved protocols as to times of operation and numbers of people. Restrictions on the sale of tobacco will be lifted. The suspension of the sale of alcohol will be lifted subject to certain restrictions. Alcohol will be permitted for on-site consumption in licensed establishments only up to 10 p.m. Liquor outlets will be allowed to sell alcohol for off-site consumption from Monday to Thursday during the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. only.
So what does the new year mean to you? Please do join the conversation using the hashtag SABC Unfiltered. We are joined this evening by tourism expert Leanne Back. We also have founder of Sakumzi restaurant in Soweto, Sakumzi Makubule, as well as Lumkile Mondi, who is a senior lecturer at the School of Economics and Business Science at Wits University. Leanne, the point that Lumkile raised earlier on around how the economy has hemorrhaged jobs, including some executives taking salary cuts. Okay, let me give you a minute just to catch your breath. Are you okay now?
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So the impact of that means that it has an impact on disposable income and whether or not people would be willing to travel. But there's also another side to this conversation, and that is the real fears around COVID-19 and traveling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's two aspects you're talking about there. The one is, yes, absolutely. So our pool of people available who can actually travel for domestic purposes has obviously shrunk. And, prior to COVID, 40% of our population said that affordability was their biggest issue as to why they didn't travel. So now that percentage is going to go up significantly, which definitely will mean that our industry is going to shrink even further. In terms of the direct spend of a roughly 44 billion that we normally get. Mm-hmm. So that is a definite negative. And then obviously to top on, as you're saying, to top it on top of that is the fear of obviously getting COVID or actually transmitting COVID or being a transmitter by traveling around, which is a very real fear, and it's realistic. But the good news is that the industry has taken this very seriously. They've got some fantastic protocols, and I think Sakumzi can actually talk about what he's probably put in place at his restaurant. And, I, as a tourist and within the industry and seeing what the industry's been doing, I'm quite comfortable to travel around. And I would like to say that, the fear of contracting COVID from traveling around, if you follow all the protocols that are put in place, follow all the recommendations put forward by our government in terms of social distancing, wearing a mask, sanitizing, the risks are not that high. And the accommodation providers are really going all out to make sure that their places are sanitized and that there is minimal risk for guests. Yeah. The same applies within restaurants in terms of the capacities that they're allowed to carry. So, follow the protocols, but go out there and enjoy, and let's start to reinvest our money into our economy in terms of the travel and tourism sector.
Yeah. Okay. So Sakumzi, speak to us about some of those measures that you have put in place, but also, I don't know, when did you start? When did you reopen?
It's almost a month now. We are opened, and we are a member of Restaurant Collection, where we are working with FEDUSA. So we had to adhere to procedures and the steps that we need to do before we can open, your distancing and all that. But what I would like to point out is COVID, it's been around, it had an impact. What we need to look at is each and everyone in the country, especially big corporate companies, they need to work with small businesses. When you look at smaller businesses like your Sakumzi restaurant or restaurants at large, we are employing many people, and those people that we employ, in their homes, they've got computers. In their homes, they've got television sets like your Samsung television sets. They've got cell phones. So we need all these companies to start supporting small business so that the economy can start moving forward.
In which way?
It mustn't be something that we only rely to the government, that what is the government doing to support small businesses? Who is benefiting in the economy? With the staff that we have, they own cars. They are able to buy second-hand cars. They are able to buy new TVs.
In which way do you think that big business can assist SMMEs, especially in the tourism sector?
They need to support small businesses in capacity building as well, because what we need as small business is more training, so that when we've got capacity, we are able to grow our businesses. When we grow our businesses, we are able to spend money with Messmart. We are able to spend money with your Bidvest. We are able to spend money on buying cell phones or Samsung.
Okay, but Mondi, how do you then see big business helping out SMMEs? Is this part of the conversation that we should be having about the post-COVID-19 economy?
Well, in fact, I think the product should stand on its own merit. I think it's very important for us to really create an environment whereby the 5 pillars of our tourism strategy is intensified. These 5 pillars are the marketing of their businesses, if they're small, making sure that these small businesses have got easy access, but also the experience of visitors is phenomenal. But also, in certain cases, if visitors are coming as a destination, that the management of that destination is sure. And lastly, of course, as you are saying, Aldrin, that there has to be some broad-based benefit, not only for bigger businesses, but also for smaller businesses. That is why many of us expected that, for the tourism sector, at least the international travel with all the protocols will be open, because that will then complement the potential loss of domestic travel. Because remember that what they bring to us with a very weak rand, they help us bring back those jobs that have been lost. Were far cheaper, but with a far better experience given our flora and fauna. So we're very disappointed that, for the tourism sector, at level 2, we're not opening up for international tourism, which really impacts across many areas, given the beauty of our country.
When we come back, we'll delve into that conversation about the impact that the lack of the decision that was taken not to lift the ban on international travel will have on the tourism industry. Remember, earlier on, we told you that the tourism industry has lost about 22.7 billion rand a month since the lockdown, and most of this money is money that comes from international travel. As Sakumzi has also said that over 200 tourists that he'd be hosting during lunchtime, all of that is gone. That conversation just after this. And welcome back. You're still watching Unfiltered with me, Aldrin Simpierli. And just quickly before we end this segment on SABC3 and we move over the conversation to SABC's news channel 404, the impact that the restriction on international travel would have on the industry. And the points that Lumkile is also raising around how this will affect the industry and how important it is.
Okay, so it's in terms of direct spend in our economy. So in other words, what tourists actually spend on accommodation, on food, etc. Basically, 65% of that direct spend is due to foreign tourists. So only 35% of that direct spend is due to domestic tourists. So that's significant if you think about it. And just when we're talking about restaurants and food in particular, foreign tourists spent last year, they spent 16 billion rand on food. So I think it's mainly restaurants, but it's also some self-catering stuff, but they spent 16 billion rand. Domestic tourists spent 8 billion rand. So you can see why Sukumzi is saying, well, this is hurting his business, and why so many other businesses are really being impacted by the fact that we don't have any foreign tourists visiting our shores at the moment.
Have we seen any requests as yet, or any interest to travel? Interest to travel to SA?
Interest to travel. There actually has been. I mean, it's not the 10.2 million tourists that we got last year. But definitely from talking to people within the industry, a lot of trips have had to be postponed. I mean, people have obviously planned lifelong trips, bucket list trips just to come to South Africa that they were planning to do this year that now had to be postponed. They kept on postponing, or maybe we'll come in October, maybe we'll come in November. They keep on trying to push it out. But obviously, while the borders are closed, they can't come.
Yeah.
But even if we open our borders, it doesn't mean that we're going to get a flood of tourists. We have to be realistic.
Yeah. Okay.
Because people don't want to necessarily. There's obviously a huge risk to themselves, and also countries, the recipient countries or the source countries, they might be saying to their citizens, "Listen, we don't recommend that you travel to South Africa at the moment because of the high levels of COVID."
Okay.
So we have to be realistic too. So even if we open borders, it doesn't mean the floodgates are going to open.
Okay. So when we come back, the conversation that we're going to have is how does this have an impact on the likes of Sakumzi, for instance, as he indicated earlier on that around 200 tourists during lunchtime and all of that is gone. What is it that they can do, and what's the explanation from government about why that particular decision has been taken to continue the restriction on international travel? That conversation will continue on the SABC News channel. We say goodbye to our SABC3 viewers. Welcome back. We continue our focus on the tourism industry as the country moves into level 2 of the national lockdown. So, Kumzi, the question is around the explanation that you guys got from government around why they've decided to continue with the restriction on international travel.
For me, it is quite understandable because we saw what happened in China, in Wuhan. They closed their economy, and the infection was not spreading. So we are still not out of the bushes for now. So my take is let's do with what is available. There is domestic tourism. As when I started, I said, I feel like going away. If I can have assurance, if I go to Hazy View, they are ready for business, everything, the precautions, they are taking care of it. I am ready to leave Johannesburg and drive to Hazy View or Libuachom, just to be there for another 4 days or 5 days, then I can come back and work. The same as all South Africans, what we can do, let's do with what is available. Let's enjoy our country. We've got a beautiful country.
Sure. But I want to know what the explanation was. What explanation was given to you guys? Sure. I just wanted to know what explanation was given to you guys around why the government decided not to lift international travel. restrictions around international
it's not
travel?
only South Africa alone that has not opened its borders. So far, we haven't had anyone from the government or from the tourism department saying we are not opening borders. There's no communication. Maybe is it because we are in Soweto? I'm not aware.
Okay. Bob Mondi, do you think that people like Sakumzi, for instance, are too understanding and very lenient on the approach that the state is taking?
So my understanding from what the president said 2 days ago is exactly that in many areas of our country, except KZN, that we've peaked, and having peaked meant, but not only have we peaked, there's much deeper understanding about what we need to do as South Africans. But more importantly also, I think the hospitals and other health infrastructure is now available to deal with any challenge than before the first lockdown in March. So if you've got that then, and given the suffering, the declining conditions of many people, particularly your low-income service workers who opportunities go forward. This is an opportunity for us to start at the bottom. And the tourism sector, because of its link with creative guys, those young men and women who dance for us when we go to Sakumzi, or and other cultural players in the area who, in fact, complement Sakumzi's business. Those should be benefiting. So it seems to me that there is a lack of clarity around what was the lockdown meant for, given that we understand the health impact. Now we have to create opportunity. We have to move people out of unemployment and destitution back into the labor market.
Yeah. The question that I asked earlier on social media was that, is our strategy saying that we do not allow international travel because we fear that the person who's traveling from outside will come back with COVID-19, even though we have somebody in the mall already roaming around with COVID-19? And then the response from somebody was that it's possibly because there are various other strains outside that are more lethal than the strain that we have here in the country. Do you think that that could be one of the reasons?
Well, in fact, experts told us very loud and clear that given the comorbidities of South Africans, that is high levels of HIV and AIDS, as well as others such as hypertension and high blood, that we're going to have a huge number of people dying in South Africa. That has not happened. So I think it's to do with the lack of understanding of where South Africa is economically. In fact, Dr. Parili Hota penned a piece the past few days around our failure to invest on State South Africa, whereby we're no longer collecting data on income and expenditure.
Okay, we seem to have lost
this economy inclusively and move forward. So in that darkness, where our policymakers are working on autopilot, you are going to have problems.
Okay, Leanne, your understanding about this decision?
Okay, so from a tourism perspective, if you look at other countries around the world and when they've opened borders, I mean, we can look in particular towards Europe, we can look towards the East, because they were a couple of months ahead of us in terms of the COVID curve, if you want to call it that. They generally in Europe, they opened borders, and they've opened borders. I mean, they haven't actually opened all their borders yet. You have to be realistic. They've opened borders with select countries. They've called it sort of like the corridor approach or the green approach, the green bubble approach, or whatever you want to call it. So in other words, they've opened borders with countries that they deem to be relatively safe, with low numbers of new cases every day. And what they've been looking at is, if you look at the cases per million of population, the daily cases per million of population, and if you look around Europe, they opened it, I think it was about mid-June, they opened some of their borders to other European countries and to a selection of, I think it was 14 other countries. And they, at that point, their COVID levels within those European countries was less than 10, rolling average, less than 10 new cases or confirmed cases per day.
Yeah.
Okay, per million of population. We are currently, as of today, our rolling 3-day average, we're sitting at 82 cases, confirmed cases per million of population.
Yeah.
So you can see that we're still seen as a high-risk country. I mean, we've come down significantly in the last week or two, which has been fantastic. I mean, we were failing in the couple of hundreds in terms of the rolling average. So it's exponentially going down. So things are looking. We've just got to hang in there a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But things are looking positive. We're all moving in the right direction. Let's utilize the fact that we now have proper domestic tourism allowed. Let's utilize that to actually showcase to the rest of the world that we can operate safely within the tourism industry.
Yep.
And it gives more confidence that when our borders do open, we can say, look, we've been doing it for our own people for the last couple of weeks or whatever it is. Hopefully it'll be a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it safely. So please, tourists, you're welcome, and we're looking forward to hosting you.
Okay, so when we come back, the conversation we're going to have is about the marketing strategy. How do you market to South Africans and say that, hey, the reason why you should be going to Sakumzi is not only because the food is nice, but it's also because you are contributing to an economy that has been collapsing. That conversation just after this. And welcome back. Let's look at some of the tweets that you have sent through. Here's a tweet from Elaine who says, I'm terrified because now even COVID positive citizens will travel around South Africa, and this is a total recipe for disaster. But who am I to say what must be, must be? And Lynn says, I hear the cries of business owners as one of your guests says that 60% of their business is foreign tourists. Surely at this time, they, government included, should be incentivizing locals to travel. It sounds as though we are still dismissed as potential customers. Leanne, do you agree with that?
I actually do. I actually think that this is a fantastic opportunity. You know, within every crisis, there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic opportunity to realize the value of the domestic tourists and to open up and expand our domestic markets. I really do believe that a lot of our industry has focused too long on the foreign tourist, and we have neglected what the domestic tourist has to offer and neglected many of our markets. In particular, I think that there's big opportunities for more what we call budget or affordable tourism, catering to more South Africans. And, you know, in reality, travel is so good for the soul. It's good for mental health. It's good for so many things. It's good for family ties. It's good for social bonding. And just appreciation of our country, creating a sort of a vibe in our country and a sort of appreciation of what we've got. So the more people we can get to travel and appreciate what the country, the diversity of what our countries have got to offer, the better it is for our citizens, the better it is for our country. So I would love to see some of our products, new products entering the market, plus existing products actually adapting and saying, we need to tackle, or let's get more of the domestic market, and let's try and package and sell more to the domestic market. I think there's massive opportunities here. I do believe that there's some of the experiences, we can create new experiences. And we can also diversify some of our experiences a bit to cater to the domestic market.
Yeah. Okay. Sakumzi, do you think that there has been this concentration on international travel and not so much on domestic customers, even through pricing, for instance? Okay. Hi, Sakumzi, can you just quickly unmute your mic there? We can't hear you.
Yes, I'm back.
Sure.
Around lunchtime, it's been more of tourists because our locals around lunchtime, they are at work and they normally visit us after work and over weekends mostly. But as I was saying, let's do with what is available. We can't be complaining.
How do you do it?
We need our corporate companies, we need our academics to look at our future as it stands. What is it that can be done? there's a lot that we can do. People don't travel in South Africa. Let's start traveling around. There's more that can come from domestic tourism. We need to preach it.
Yeah, but Mondi, do you agree with that? That there's a lot there's a lot of potential out there, but then there's also the issue around the cost of it.
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge really for many South Africans is the ease of access to some of our beautiful destinations.
Yeah.
Aldrin, my generation, traveled by train to Umkababa. So that experience, of being able to get on a train at a far cheaper and affordable price was amazing. So with the destruction of many of the public institutions, particularly the difficulty around the bus services, where the state used to have a bigger influence and affordable for majority South Africans, that has disappeared. So I think if we're going to talk driving and deepening local travel and local experiences, the state has got a bigger role in terms of infrastructure and logistics, making sure that traveling is not only for us, the middle class, but it's an experience that should be shared by all, because the state has has invested immensely on logistic and infrastructure so that those that are low middle income can enjoy the same experience. Without that, I think tourism will also keep people at home and be discriminatory, making many South Africans not to know their country, as I did not know even the sea, because my family could not afford any trip, given the poverty I come from as a man.
Yeah. So how do you then encourage citizens to travel? Is there a way of doing it? Is there a way of incentivizing them, as the person who tweeted earlier on asked?
So the first thing is the provision.
Okay, but Mondi, you can go ahead. Leanne, I'll come to you now.
Yeah. So the most basic thing, Aldrin, is the provision of cheap, accessible, and affordable transport network, and then the rest can be laid over by private sector. Okay. As my generation experienced, even under apartheid allowed that access through trains, through buses that are affordable for ordinary people to travel. Yeah. And I think the destruction of that capability has made traveling and experiences to be for those that can afford. And I'm calling upon that if the public sector or government can make sure that those institutions of logistics become affordable to all, then traveling as well as tourism becomes not my own experience alone, because I can afford, but every household can do the same.
Yeah. Leanne, you want to add on that?
Yeah, I agree totally with what he's saying, and I also do believe that we need to bring in more affordable accommodation, and sort of I would say almost in reach type of services. So you can compartmentalize type of what your offerings are. So you can just buy a standard room, and if you want anything extra, you pay extra for that. But I also do believe that we need to make these places welcoming. So we need to understand the cultures of people that we're trying to attract. Yeah. We need to look at the food. We need to look at the entertainment, and what we're offering that's going to appeal to these markets. And then we need to get the message out there that we're offering something good quality, clean, but affordable, and makes people feel at home. They need to feel welcome. They need to feel at home, and not feel alienated in terms of what we're offering.
Mm-hmm. So, Kumzi, do you think a tax break, for instance, would assist your business?
It would assist a lot, and maybe to add on that as well is this COVID-19 has affected a lot of tour guides, because as for tour operators, maybe they've got reserves or savings that they were able to put aside. But for our tour guides that were taking these tourists around, don't have anything where they stand. They cannot even claim money for UIF or relief fund. So it's up to big corporate companies when they are doing their conferences. They must use these tour guides to tour our locations, or even going in other areas. As I said, us as South Africans, we have never explored our countries. But we are able to go as far as Japan. We are able to go as far as your Canada. It's still other rural areas.
Yeah.
We've got our own rural areas that are beautiful, that need to be explored by each and everyone in this country.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful country and we are not even aware of. But corporate South Africa must work hand in hand with our tourism departments.
Okay, and just quickly, probably in a minute or so, the impact of the 200 million rand relief fund that was made available, do you think that it has assisted some of the members in the tourism industry at all?
It certainly has assisted. Is it enough? No. But those that did receive the 50,000 rand, they were all small businesses, and I'm sure that 50,000 rand helped in some way or another. And, compared to a lot of other African countries, there's been no relief in other African countries.
Yeah.
Would we have liked more than 200 million? Yes, absolutely. Did we need more than 200 million? Yes, we did. But, we have to also bear in mind the realism of what we're facing here in this country in terms of economy.
And Babu Mondi, the coffers are already empty, right?
Absolutely. Everyone is aware that you had to borrow about $4.3 billion for COVID assistance program. And the minister wants to use that for job creation in addition to health facilities. So I'm hoping that will also push some to the tourism minister Kubai, so that we can really revive this sector because of its labor intensity, but also its linkages with other areas of the economy where jobs are intensive, and we can revive our economy going forward.
Well, actually, Minister Kubai warned earlier on this year that the tourism industry could lose up to 500,000 jobs. And let's hope that as we move on to level 2 of the lockdown, that it would mean that some jobs will be saved. Thank you so much for watching Unfiltered with me, Aldrin Simpier. We've come to the end of today's program. Catch me again next week, same time, same place, right here on the SABC News Channel and SABC 3. Goodbye.